The afternoon sun in Taipei was dazzling, and the bustling cine district was like a pot of boiling porridge. Youkai rushed out of the library of the Department of Archaeology, cell phone in hand, and his face was ashen. He just received an anonymous message on social media, as brief as a ghost's whisper: "The professor is missing, entrance to the ancient tomb, come quickly. Don't tell others." He panted and leaned against a telephone pole on the side of the road, his head pounding. His mentor, Professor Li, was his idol. The white-haired old man always loved to tell the secrets of ancient dynasties in class, with his eyes shining, as if he was talking about his own family affairs. Missing? In which ancient tomb? Youkai's heartbeat quickened, and he immediately dialed Guan Ting's number. "Hey, Tingzi, where are you? It's urgent." Youkai's voice was kept low to avoid being heard by passers-by. Guan Ting's usual calm tone came from the other end of the phone, with the sound of typing on the keyboard in the background. "I'm working overtime at the company, what's wrong? I hear you're breathing like this, did you run a marathon? Don't make trouble, the professor is missing. There is an anonymous message saying that he is at the entrance of the legendary 1,000-year-old tomb. I have to go and take a look." Guan Ting's voice paused, and then there was the sound of a chair scraping the floor. "What? Professor Li? Isn't that old man investigating in the mountains? Stop messing around and call the police. This sounds like a prank." Youkai gritted his teeth and looked at the skyscrapers on the street, feeling like a fool, but his curiosity burned him like fire. Call the police? Will they believe it? The professor's team has long said that he went on an expedition alone, and the police are treating it as a missing person case. If I don't go, who will? Tingzi, you are an engineer, help me analyze it. This ancient tomb is a mausoleum from the Eastern Han dynasty. It is hidden deep in Yangmingshan. Legend has it that there is a curse or something. Guan Ting sighed, with helplessness in his voice. Curse? Please, you are from the archaeology department and I am a science major. It sounds like the plot of a horror movie. Okay, I'll ask for leave and we can meet and chat in the evening. Send me your address. 2 hours later, they met at a roadside stall. As night falls, the neon lights of Taipei flash, and the aroma of braised pork rice wafts from the stalls. Guan Ting was wearing a shirt, pushed up his glasses, and looked at Youkai with a beer glass. Tell me, be more detailed. Is there any evidence for the message? Youkai showed the screenshot from his mobile phone. The message was sent with a blank avatar. That's it, not much to say. But the professor also sent me a message last week, saying that he had discovered something big, about the secret of the dynasty's bloodline. Tingzi, we can't sit idly by. Guan Ting frowned and poked at his phone. Secret of bloodline? It sounds mysterious. In the ancient tomb, the mountain road is rugged and there is no signal. What if something happens? We two rookies are students at most, not Indiana Jones. Youkai's eyes lit up and he slapped the table. That's why it's so exciting. Think about it, cracking the 1,000-year mechanism, finding the professor, and maybe digging out treasures. Tingzi, do you have those detectors? Heat-sensing ones, radar ones, let me use them. Guan Ting shook his head, but raised the corners of his mouth slightly. You hot-blooded fool, you are always so impulsive. Okay, I will bring the equipment, but we have to plan well. We will set off early tomorrow morning and drive my off-road vehicle straight to Yangmingshan. Remember, safety first. They clinked glasses, the foam of their beer sparkling in the light. Youkai felt warm in his heart. Guan Ting was always like this. He said he was disgusted, but he was the most reliable in his actions. In the early morning of the next day, the fog in Yangmingshan had not yet cleared, and their off-road vehicle bumped along the winding mountain road. Outside the car window was a dense forest, with occasional monkeys scurrying by, and the air was so humid it looked like water could be squeezed out. Youkai opened the map app and pointed the way excitedly. If you turn another corner, you will reach the legendary entrance. It is said that this ancient tomb is the tomb of the nobles of the Eastern Han dynasty, and the entrance is hidden behind the waterfall. Guan Ting held the steering wheel, sweating on his forehead. Legend? It doesn't sound good. The cell phone signal is weak, and the GPS started to jump randomly. Are you sure this is not a haunted route? Stop crows, Tingzi. This is an adventure. Youkai smiled and patted him on the shoulder, but he felt uneasy in his heart. The message was too weird, as if someone deliberately lured them here. The car stopped at the end of a hidden path. They put on their backpacks and stepped on slippery leaves when they got out of the car. The air smelled of earth and moss, and waterfalls roared in the distance. Following the sound of water, they pushed aside the vines, and a crack-like hole appeared in front of them, hidden behind the rock wall. The entrance was narrow, allowing only one person to pass through. Wow, this is it! Youkai exclaimed in a low voice, taking out a flashlight and shining it in. The cave was as dark as ink, and the walls were carved with ancient runes, like twisted ghost faces. Guan Ting took out a small detector from his bag, a handheld radar and a thermal sensor. I'll scan first. Youkai, don't touch it. There are many traps in these ancient tombs. What if they collapse? They squeezed into the entrance, their footsteps echoing on the stone steps. The air was freezing and so humid that my clothes clung to my skin. Yokai's flashlight swept across the wall, and the runes seemed to be flickering. He looked closer and said, Tingzi, look, this is the inscription of Guardian of the Dead. Guan Ting's detector beeped slightly. The heat source is normal and there are no living things. But the structure is unstable and there is a cavity in the front. Be careful. They walked more than 10 meters and came to a small hall. There is a stone platform in the center with lotus patterns engraved on it. Several bronze mirrors are embedded in the surrounding walls. The mirrors are covered with dust, reflecting blurry shadows. Yokai's curiosity got the better of him, and he stretched out his finger to touch a groove on the edge of the stone platform. Is this a keyhole? The professor's notes said that it can be opened by inserting the jade pendant. Wait, I have a replica in my bag. Hey, stop. Guan Ting pulled him, but it was too late. Youkai took out a pendant carved from green jade from his backpack and stuffed it into the groove. There was a click, the stone platform shook, and the mirror on the wall lit up with a faint light, like eyes opening. Oops, it's triggered. Guan Ting's voice trembled. He rushed over and pressed the detector, but the instrument beeped wildly and the thermal sensor showed abnormal fluctuations. Youkai retreated, his heart beating like a drum. There was a rotten smell in the air, like the smell of a tomb. From under the stone platform, a low murmur came, like the wind passing through the cracks in the bones, and like countless voices whispering in the ears, return, bloodline, guard. What the hell? Youkai muttered, turning to look at Guan Ting. My friend's face turned pale, and the screen on the detector flashed red. This is not a mechanism, but an energy field. Youkai, let's go, this place is evil. But curiosity was like a hook, and Youkai shook his head. Listen, the voice is luring us. The professor may be inside. He took a deep breath and pushed open the secret door behind the stone platform. Behind the door is a tomb passage, long and narrow and eerie. The walls are covered with vine-like cracks. The air is even colder, like the chill of the tomb. They went deeper step by step, their footsteps amplified in the darkness. Guan Ting installed small sensors on the wall as he walked. These can detect movement. If there is a collapse or something coming, we can run. But his voice trembled, and a faint sense of foreboding was lingering like a shadow. At the turn of the tomb passage, the murmurs became clear, mixed with vague roars, like beasts roaring in their throats. Yokai's flashlight illuminated the bone fragments scattered on the ground, which were so white that his stomach churned. Tingzi, did you hear it? It sounded like a living corpse. Guan Ting swallowed. Don't talk nonsense, it may be the rumor. But where is the professor? We have to find an exit. Suddenly, there was an echo from the front, and a familiar voice echoed in the tomb passage. Youkai, is here, be careful, photo album. It was the professor's voice, hoarse and rapid, as if coming from the abyss. The sound was like an ice needle piercing Youkai's head. He stopped suddenly, and the beam of the flashlight flickered in the tomb passage, illuminating the winding stone wall in front of him. Guan Ting also froze, the detector still held in his hand, and the red light on the screen flashed like a heartbeat. Professor? That's the professor's voice. Youkai growled, his voice echoing in the narrow passage, unable to suppress his excitement and panic. He said, "Be careful, of the photo album." What did he mean? Tingzi, we have to get there quickly. Guan Ting's face was as pale as paper under the flashlight light. He pushed up his glasses and his Adam's apple rolled. Wait, Youkai, this doesn't sound right. Why is there an echo in the tomb passage? It may be the sound effect of the mechanism, luring us deeper. The professor is missing. What if this is a trap? What a trap! Youkai turned around and glared at him, his eyes burning. He called my name. If we run now, wouldn't it be in vain? Tingzi, didn't you say safety first? Then use your engineering brain to help, and we will do it step by step. Guan Ting sighed. Although his heart was pounding, looking at Youkai's stubborn look, he still nodded, okay, but walk slowly. My sensors show that there is a metal structure ahead, which may be a mechanism. Look at the grooves on the wall, which look like arrow launch ports. Don't step on them. They moved on, their steps becoming cautious, each step felt like stepping on thin ice. The tomb passage became narrower and narrower, and the smell of decay in the air became heavier, mixed with a faint smell of sulfur, making people breathless. Youkai swept his flashlight across the wall, and the ancient runes seemed to come alive, with the lines twisting into ghostly faces. He couldn't help but reach out and touch a stone with his fingers, feeling the cold texture. Hey, what are you doing? Guan Ting shouted in a low voice and grabbed his wrist. Experience tells me that the walls of ancient tombs are often pressure sensitive. Look, the stone slabs here are slightly tilted, and it may trigger them if you step on them. He took out a small clip from his backpack, fixed it on the ground, and then scanned it with a detector. There is no abnormality in the heat sensor, but the structural diagram shows that this place is connected to the underground sewer. Avoid the middle and stick to the wall. Youkai smiled awkwardly and retracted his hand. Sorry, Tingzi, I was too impatient. Archaeology textbooks say these mechanisms are anti-theft, but personal experience, it's so damn exciting. He patted Guan Ting on the shoulder, trying to ease the atmosphere. Thanks to your scientific brain, otherwise I would have become a hedgehog. Guan Ting snorted and forced a smile from the corners of his mouth. Excitement. This is called seeking death. You are a hot-blooded idiot, and I am the unlucky follower. Remember, listen to me next time. They moved sideways against the wall, and Guan Ting's detector occasionally beeped, guiding them around several hidden trap pits. It was dark inside, and there were looming spikes. After walking for about 20 minutes, the tomb passage suddenly widened, and a fork appeared in front of it. On the left is a dark branch road, and on the right there is a faint green light seeping out. The ground was littered with gravel and strips of cloth. Youkai knelt down and picked up a piece of dirty cloth, smelling the familiar smell of tobacco. This belongs to the professor. The cigarettes he smokes always have this old-school smell. Guan Ting's detector beeped more urgently at the fork. He frowned and scanned. The heat source is abnormal, and there is residual body temperature on the right. It may be that he passed by. But be careful, the structure is unstable. They turned to the right, and the green light became brighter and brighter, illuminating the mottled murals on the wall, nobles from ancient dynasties, wearing crowns, holding jade staffs, surrounded by vague shadow figures. Suddenly, Youkai's foot kicked something and made a crisp sound. He looked down and saw that it was a small booklet with a yellowed cover and frayed edges. With his heart beating faster, he picked it up and opened it. On the first page, there was scrawled, Professor Li's Notes, Eastern Han Dynasty Tomb Expedition Diary. Tingzi, look at this. Youkai shouted excitedly, handing over the booklet. Guan Ting came closer and shined his flashlight on the writing. The ancient tomb is not a simple mausoleum, but a guardian of the dynasty's bloodline. The curse of the undead originates from the labyrinth of shadows, and those who trigger it will awaken the sleeping ones. The photo album is the key, connecting life and death. Do not touch the core. Guan Ting read out, his voice getting lower and lower. What the hell? Curse of the undead. This sounds like a folk ghost story. How did the professor write this? Youkai's head was buzzing. He quickly turned the page and saw a hand-drawn drawing, a photo album-like thing with distorted photos and the annotation, family bloodline, source of living corpses. The professor discovered it. This ancient tomb connects the dead souls of ancient dynasties. It may be some kind of ritual. The photo album, his voice just mentioned this. We have to find him. Guan Ting shook his head, sweating on his forehead. Youkai, this is too mysterious. As an engineer, I only believe in data, and this note looks like the graffiti of a madman. We should withdraw and call the police. But before he finished speaking, the runes on the last page of the book suddenly became hot. Youkai's hand shook, and the book fell to the ground, hitting a loose stone slab next to the wall. With a click, the mechanism was triggered. The ground shook, and a thick green poisonous mist spewed out from the crack behind the mural on the right, filling the air instantly like a devil's breath. Youkai coughed and backed away, his eyes stinging. Damn it, I didn't pay attention. Tingzi, there is something in the fog. In the mist, a low roar came, first as fine as the wind, and then turned into a beast-like roar. Guan Ting's detector went into frantic alarm, and its thermal sensors showed multiple moving heat sources. It's alive. Something is awake. Run, take the left fork. He pulled Youkai around, and the black shadow in the fog rushed towards him, a twisted corpse, with skin as rotten as bark, eyes hollow and white, and its mouth open to reveal fangs. It let out a weird roar, as if there were bones stuck in the throat, echoing in the tomb passage, making people's eardrums hurt. Damn, what kind of monster is this? Youkai screamed. The inexperienced man tripped in panic, his knees scraped against the ground, and blood oozed out. The first living corpse behind him jumped into the air, its claws scraped against the stone wall, and sparks flew everywhere. Guan Ting turned back and pulled him up, his face was ashen, and his rational defense line was on the verge of collapse. Get up. Don't be in a daze, you idiot. They are not fast, but you can't see clearly in the fog. The rhythm of the chase was as fast as the heartbeat. They ran wildly in the tomb passage, stepping randomly, and the roar of the living corpses got closer and closer. The second and third ones burst out of the fog, their bodies twisted like puppets with strings cut off, their arms stretched, dragging the carrion on the ground. Youkai gasped, the professor's warning flashed through his mind, and his heart sank. Is this the curse of the undead? His little mistake led to this hellish scene, and his guilt was like a knife in his heart. But he gritted his teeth and turned to Guan Ting and shouted, Tingzi, hold on. Where is your sensor? Find the way. Guan Ting's eyes were red, and sweat mixed with mist dripped down. He looked at the detector while running, his hands shaking violently. Collapse. No, there is a cavity 50 meters ahead, maybe a hull. But the heat source is outflanking it, turn left. His voice was crying, and the engineer's logic was shattered by terror. Youkai, I regret it. This is not an adventure, it is a death. Don't be soft. Think about the beer we had at the roadside stall, and then talk about it after drinking it. Youkai pushed him hard, and friendship was like the last pillar, allowing him to regain his courage. They turned left and rushed into a side passage. The claws of the living corpse brushed against Youkai's backpack and tore the fabric. Roaring sounds came like a tide, and more corpses were vaguely seen squirming in the mist, like nightmares crawling out of the ground. Finally, a stone door appeared in front of it, half opened. Guan Ting pushed them open with all his strength, and they rolled into a secret hall. The mechanism behind the door closed automatically, blocking out the roar of the chase. The hall was small, and the walls were covered with bronze mirrors, reflecting their embarrassed shadows. The air was a little fresher, but Youkai panted and sat down against the wall, the wound on his knee burning. Guan Ting collapsed on the ground, the detector fell aside. He held his head and murmured, "It's over, are those things living corpses?" The professor's notes didn't lie, "I can't hold on anymore, Youkai, we will die here." His voice was trembling, and his rationality was on the verge of collapse, making him look like a child. Youkai endured the pain and crawled over, patted his back, and pretended to be calm. "Hey, Tingzi, don't be like this. You just saved me twice, and your head is much stronger than those monsters. Remember? When we broke into the campus haunted house in college, you laughed at me for being cowardly. Now let me help you. Let's find the professor and go out together. Come on, get up and check the wound." He pulled the bandage from his backpack and handed it to Guan Ting, his eyes shining with determination. Guan Ting raised his head, looked at his friend's smiling face, took a deep breath, and reluctantly took the bandage. "You hot-blooded ghost, you are always like this. Okay, but listen to me next time." They bandaged each other, and the mirror in the hall reflected their shadows, but suddenly they moved. The shadows on the wall began to squirm, stretched like living creatures, twisting into shapes that did not belong to them, and faint whispers could be heard. Youkai's heart sank. The reality of this place was changing, and the supernatural fog was seeping into every corner. Youkai stared at the mirrors, his throat going dry. The shadow should have been their reflection, but instead it twisted like a drunk ghost, his figure stretched its arms, and Guan Ting's head suddenly turned into a blurry outline. A faint whisper leaked out from behind the mirror, like the sound of wind in an ancestral grave, mixed with intermittent whispers, "Come back, bloodline." He rubbed his eyes, thinking it was the mist, but the wriggling became more and more real, as if something in the mirror wanted to crawl out. "Tingzi, did you see it? Those shadows, they are moving." Youkai whispered, his voice sounding like he was peeking at a forbidden book in the library. He climbed up, the wound on his knee was still aching, and the cold air leaked from the tear in his backpack, making him shiver. Youkai nodded, moved closer to the nearest mirror, and shined a flashlight on it. The mirror reflected not only the two of them, but also a blurry picture. As a child, he squatted in the dilapidated living room of his hometown. His parents' quarrels were thunderous, his father's fist hit the table, and his mother's cries echoed. It was a fragment of childhood trauma. After his parents divorced, he hid in a corner alone, his shadow stretched out as if a monster was about to swallow him. Is this my childhood home? Why are we here?" He murmured. The fear of that night flashed through his mind, and his heart felt like it was being squeezed. The shadow in the mirror stretched out its hand, as if to pull him back. The air became sticky, and the roar of the living corpse filtered in from the distant tomb passage, low and reverberating, like resentment in the throat. Guan Ting turned to look at his own mirror, his face turned pale instantly. In the reflection, he stood on a viaduct, the wind howled, the bridge suddenly broke, the steel bars twisted like snakes, and below was an abyss-like river valley, and screams could be heard everywhere. It was a nightmare during his college internship. The model he designed collapsed, almost killing the team, and he still wakes up at night. No. That's impossible. He took a step back and bumped into another mirror, the detector beeping wildly. "Youkai, it's playing tricks on us. What these mirrors reflect is not the present, but the ghosts inside. Psychological warfare, understand? It's like the haunted houses in those old movies." His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. "We can't panic, we have to find an exit. Look, there is an arch at the back of this hall, and the mirrors are surrounded by a circle, like the entrance to a maze." Youkai shook his head, trying to shake off the shadow of childhood hallucinations. He knew that this was a curse, and the professor's notes mentioned the maze of shadows, but seeing it with his own eyes still made him weak in the knees. "Tingzi, you are right. We cannot let these shadows eat us. Let's go in and take a look. My archaeological intuition tells me that the professor may be over there. He took Guan Ting's wrist, pretending to be calm, and the two of them squeezed through the arch sideways. Behind the door is an endless corridor. The walls, floor, and ceiling are all inlaid with bronze mirrors. Every step reflects countless selves, superimposing into a strange legion. The air was cool and smelled of metal, and the roars of the living corpses came from behind the mirror, sometimes near and sometimes far away, as if they were mocking their struggles. Guan Ting also stood up, staring at a mirror. In his reflection, there were several non-existent scratches on his arms, which were bloody. Hell, this isn't an optical illusion. Look at my detector. He picked up the dropped device, and garbled words popped up on the screen, and the heat sensor fluctuated violently like an electrocardiogram. The magnetic field is abnormal. There is electromagnetic interference in these mirrors. It may be due to some strange or mixed in the bronze. Youkai, we have to leave, this hall is a big trap. His voice still had the aftertaste of the collapse just now, but the encouragement from his friends made him steady, and the engineer's instinct began to operate. Oh my God, this place is like a mirror with infinite reflections. Guan Ting gasped, scanning with a detector as he walked. The heat source is scattered, but the reflection pattern is regular. Look, each group of 5 mirrors has an angle of 45 degrees, like an ancient optical mechanism. The undead use this thing to trap people and amplify fear. He squatted down and adjusted the device, and the screen displayed a virtual reflection path map. If we follow the straight line pattern, avoiding the twisted group, we can pass through. Youkai, you are responsible for watching the road, and I will do the math. Youkai nodded, the guilt in his heart still gnawing at him. It was all his fault for triggering the mechanism just now, causing Guan Ting to end up in this hellish place. But his friend's rationality allowed him to regain his balance. Okay, Tingzi, you are my compass. As for me, I rely on curiosity as my compass. Remember when we were lost in the mountains when we were children? You used tree branches to draw a map to find north, and I drilled randomly and found a stream. Teamwork, right? He smiled and tried to ease the atmosphere with old jokes. The two of them moved forward side by side, and the conversation was like a rope, tightening each other's courage. Guan Ting's mirror also went crazy, the image of the bridge collapse expanded, and he saw himself falling, the faces of his teammates twisted into zombies, and the screams turned into roars. Damn it! I hurt them. He muttered, the edge of rationality breaking out again, and the detector in his hand almost slipped. But he gritted his teeth and grabbed Yokai's shoulders. Wake up. This is a psychological attack, like hypnosis. Look at my picture, turn left 3 times to avoid the twisted group. He pulled Youkai away forcefully, and the two of them moved forward against the wall. The shadow tentacles brushed against the sleeves, making a hissing sound like burnt paper. Guan Ting's voice trembled, revealing the fear in his heart. Youkai, I'm afraid, if I make a mistake, we will be trapped here forever and become those monsters. But the maze is unforgiving. After walking a few steps, Yokai's mirror changed again, his childhood hallucination escalated, and he saw his father's shadow rushing towards him, his fist smashing into his face, and his roar superimposed into the roar of a living corpse. Dad, don't. He instinctively retreated and bumped into Guan Ting. The wound on his knee split open and blood dripped on the ground. The shadow stretched out tentacle-like black threads from the mirror and pulled his arm. It was as cold as an iron hook. The boundary between reality and illusion was blurred, and he felt his skin tearing. Tingzi, this is not fake. It's pulling me. What are you afraid of? Together, we are not afraid of any monsters. Youkai gasped and shook his hand back, friendship shining through fear. He suppressed the trauma with curiosity and intuitively guided them into a narrow passage. Look, the reflection in the mirror over there is normal and not distorted. The professor's note said that the maze is an inner trial, and you have to face it to solve it. Tingzi, your engineering brain saved us, and my little brain is not idle either. Their conversation was intermittent, mixed with gasps and curses, and the roar of the living corpse was like background music, echoing in the mirror array, amplifying every heartbeat. Guan Ting's detector beeped, scanning the blood stains. The body temperature remains, but there are abnormal components, like accelerated corruption. The professor may have triggered the core, and he is now in a semi-living corpse state. Youkai, we have to hurry, the photo album, he warned, is deep inside. His voice was low, fear mixed with determination, and the two of them stepped up. The pace is fast, but the shadow tentacles are more rampant, pulling from all directions, and the hallucinations in the mirror are superimposed. Youkai's childhood monsters and Guan Ting's bridge ghosts are intertwined, roaring sounds are coming like a tide, the walls of reality seem to be melting, and a supernatural chill seeps into the bone marrow, making it difficult for them to distinguish which is the mirror and which is reality. While moving forward, Youkai stepped on something sticky with his foot. When he looked down, he saw that it was blood, fresh, dragging a zigzag line straight to a broken mirror in front of him. The blood also smelled of tobacco, and it was so familiar that it made his stomach tighten. Tingzi, this belongs to the professor. He is injured. No, the blood is dark, as if mixed with something. He squatted down and touched it, his fingers were stained with mucus, and the mirror reflected an illusion. The professor's face was twisted into half corpse and half human, his eyes were white, and he roared and stretched out his hand. He fell. The curse turned him into those things. Suddenly, a mirror cracked, and black thread sprang out like vines, wrapping around Guan Ting's ankles. He screamed, the detector dropped, and the screen shattered. Youkai, help me. Youkai rushed over and smashed the black silk with his backpack. The two of them rolled into a side passage. While breathing, they heard the whispers in the distance become clearer. Bloodline. Album. Come on. The path of the maze was twisted, and they lost their sense of direction. The shadow army was crawling behind them, and the footsteps of pursuit were approaching faintly. Youkai gasped, leaning against the cold mirror wall, his chest felt like it had been hit by a hammer. The moment the black thread wrapped around Guan Ting, there was only one thought left in his mind: he could not leave his best friend behind. After they rolled into this side passage, the footsteps did not stop. On the contrary, the echo of the maze amplified the squirming shadows into a tide, and the roars came from all directions, like the gongs and drums at the hometown temple fair, mixed with resentment and making people panic. Tingzi, are you okay? Youkai shouted, his voice bouncing in the mirror array and becoming distorted, like a ghost imitating his speech. He fumbled to pick up the dropped backpack, and the flashlight inside was still on, illuminating Guan Ting's face, as pale as grave soil, and the mark left by the black thread on his ankle was red and swollen, faintly bleeding. Guan Ting gritted his teeth and climbed up, rubbing his ankles. I can hold on, but this damn thing is changing. The route map just now is all messed up, and the detector is broken. I have to repair it. He took out a few wires and spare batteries from his pocket. The engineer's habit allowed him to stabilize temporarily, but the panic in his eyes could not be hidden. Youkai, those shadows, they know our weaknesses. I saw yours and felt mine when I was a kid. It's like digging out my heart. Youkai nodded, his throat tightening. He didn't want to mention his father's shadow, but the image was still in his mind. Yes, it's like when I was a kid, hiding in bed and listening to my parents quarreling. The shadows stretched so long that I was scared that a monster was coming. Tingzi, we have to stick together, even if we shout, don't let them separate us. He pulled Guan Ting up, and the two of them moved forward against the wall. The mirror reflected their numerous figures, each with a weird arc, as if they were mocking. But the maze offers no respite. The side road suddenly forked, and a gust of cold wind rushed from the left, mixed with a whisper, separate, inside. Youkai's foot slipped and he stepped on a pool of mucus, like blood mixed with ink, and he fell forward. Guan Ting stretched out his hand to grab it, but another black thread came out of the mirror on the right and was dragged into the opposite side of the road. Youkai! Hurry up! Guan Ting's shout echoed, but the sound lengthened into an echo, mixed into the roar, and sounded like a distant soul. Tingzi! Youkai jumped into the air and his knee hit the mirror, causing his eyesight to turn black in pain. He got up, and the mirrors around him all changed. The shadows were no longer the two of them, but the phantoms of countless living corpses, rotting faces, white eyes, and open mouths spitting out black mist. A roar erupted from the mirror, distorting into a familiar voice, "Youkai, save me, bloodline." That was the professor's tone. The low cry for help was like the tone when talking about ancient tomb mechanisms in class, but it was mixed with the hoarseness of a torn throat. But the memories came back, not with fear, but with warmth. In the professor's archaeology class, when he touched the bronze mirror fragment for the first time, the professor patted him on the shoulder and said, "Boy, history is not a dead thing, it lives in our curiosity. But remember, when facing fear, you have to use your brain, not your impulse." That night, they stayed in the library until midnight, and the professor talked about the undead legends of the dynasty, his eyes shining. "Bloodline is the key to the curse. Youkai, you have this passion, you will be a good archaeologist in the future. Those past events are like lamps, illuminating the darkness inside." He took a deep breath and clenched his fists, he could no longer hide. "The professor is waiting for me, I have to grow up and face this shit." Yokai's heart beat rapidly, he took a step back, and his back hit another mirror. "Professor? Is that you?" He murmured, and glanced over with his flashlight. The living corpse professor in the mirror stretched out his hand. The skin peeled off, revealing the bones, and black blood dripped between the fingers. The image was superimposed into his childhood fears, his father's fist turned into the professor's paw, hitting him, and his parents' quarrels were mixed into the roar, "You useless thing, come back." The air was sticky like a spider web, and he felt the shadow pulling at his feet. The isolated terror was like a tide, and a thought flashed through his mind, how could I be so stupid? Curiosity killed everyone, and the professor disappeared all because I insisted on breaking in. On the other side, Guan Ting was dragged into a fork in the road by the black thread and fell into a small hall. The mirrors on the four walls reflected his bridge nightmare. The steel bars twisted, and his partner's face turned into a living corpse, and the screams echoed, "You killed us." He curled up, his rational support crumbling, and his hands shook like Parkinson's disease. "No. Did I make a mistake? That time in college, the model collapsed, it was all my fault, now it's hurting Youkai." On the verge of collapse in fear, he muttered to himself, his parents' factory accident when he was a child flashed through his mind, and his father's shadow was always stuck in the machine. The picture was superimposed on the maze, and the roar turned into the father's scolding, "Engineer? Waste. Get away. You're not a professor." Youkai yelled and punched the mirror. The glass cracked a crack and black mist came out, but he didn't retreat. He stepped forward and smashed another piece with his backpack. The fragments scattered, the roar broke into echoes, and his shout spread out, "Tingzi! Where are you? Tell me the echo." The mirror array bounced the sound back and forth, like playing hide and seek, the feeling of isolation intensified, every step was like stepping on the inner demon, revealing the secret of the maze, it not only traps the body, but also digs out the heart, turning fear into a living corpse. But Guan Ting gritted his teeth and fumbled for the broken detector. The spare parts were still there, so he opened the wires with his teeth and quickly connected a homemade circuit, a simple radar that emits pulses based on the metal reflection of the mirror. "Damn, it can't collapse. Youkai is still waiting for me." He whispered, the device beeped, and the screen pieced together a rough path map, 3 on the left, 2 on the right, and the pulse could penetrate the interference of the black wire. Reason came back, like a lifebuoy, and he shouted, "Youkai! Do you hear me? Go to the place with strong echo. I am your compass, don't be afraid." The voice bounced in the mirror array, mixed with the roar, and reached Youkai. Friendship was like an echo, shortening the distance. Youkai heard it, and shouted like an anchor, Tingzi. I'm at the left fork, smashing the mirror to find you. He shouted and moved forward, and the phantom of the living corpse in the mirror chased him. The professor's call for help became urgent, album, bloodline, quickly. Isolation made him more determined. Every time he smashed a mirror, it was like smashing the shackles of childhood, and the determination to grow took root in fear. He recalled the professor's words, curiosity is not impulse, but the courage to face it. The pace quickens, the echoes interact like invisible threads, connecting their hearts, and the supernatural power of the labyrinth amplifies every breath. Suddenly, the mirror wall in front of me became smooth, and instead of reflection and distortion, a figure appeared, a woman with long hair shawl, wearing an old-style coat and skirt, as if she had stepped out of an old photo. Youkai stopped and shone his flashlight, but there was no trace of her. You, who are you? He was alert, and his growling voice was low around him, as if he was peeping. The woman turned around, with a pale but familiar face, and a smile on her lips. Youkai, long time no see. I'm Inoue, a classmate from elementary school, remember? That summer vacation, we were picking up stones by the river, and you said you wanted to be an explorer. I laughed at you for being stupid. Her voice was soft, with a local accent, like the accent of a neighbor's aunt in her hometown, but there was a chill deep in her eyes that made people shiver down the spine. Enoch took out a yellowed family photo album from her arms. The cover was engraved with strange runes, and black mist seeped from the edges of the pages. She turned a page, and the photo inside came to life. When the professor was young, he stood in front of an ancient tomb, next to a woman who looked like her face twisted into a half-corpse. This photo album is the medium of the curse, connecting the professor's bloodline with the undead in the ancient tomb. He is a descendant of the dynasty. After the mechanism is triggered, the undead spread through the blood. Look, this page is his family tree. This is where the roar of the living corpse comes from. She pointed at the photo and said in a low voice, I'm here to help you, crack it, and you can save the professor. But hurry, the maze is eating away at your heart. A blurry picture flashed through Youkai's mind. In elementary school, a girl always brought an old photo album and told ghost stories to scare him. But that was a long time ago. He shook his head. Ino. Impossible, why are you here? Where is the professor? He stepped back, and the phantom of the living corpse in the mirror remained still, as if listening to her words. Youkai stared at the photo album, feeling suspicious. Old acquaintance. Why did you show up now? There was a strange flash in her eyes, like a shadow in a mirror, with unknown intentions. The roar suddenly became louder, and black thread sprang out from the album page, wrapping around his hand. The supernatural atmosphere intensified, and the air was like solidified blood. He heard Guan Ting's shout approaching, but Inoue's laughter echoed, Trust me, Youkai. The secret of bloodline is here. The mirror array shook, footsteps approached, and the outline of a living corpse squirmed behind the wall. Everything was unresolved. Youkai's fingers froze in the air, and the touch of black threads escaping from the album page still remained on his skin, like cold snake skin. He stared at Ino, the yellowed book trembled slightly in her palm, and the black mist on the edge of the page slowly dispersed, breathing like a living creature. Believe me. Tingzi is still calling me. Please tell me clearly first, what the hell is this thing? His voice was low, but with a hint of stubbornness, like when he was a child arguing with her by the river about who picked up the bigger stone. Ino's smile faded a little. She closed the photo album, stuffed it back into her arms, and glanced at the darkness behind the mirror wall. Don't worry, Youkai. Guan Ting's voice is getting closer and closer, and he will catch up. This photo album is not a ghost, but a clue. The professor entrusted me to keep it before he disappeared. It records the blood curse of the entire dynasty, starting from the tomb 1,000 years ago. Those undead souls do not wake up randomly, they must be triggered by the blood of their descendants. Professor, he is the successor of that bloodline. Bloodline heir. Yokai's heart sank, and the secrets of the dynasty taught by the professor in class flashed through his mind. The legends about royal tombs always said that the dead would seek revenge through their descendants. He wanted to ask, but footsteps came from the side passage, quick and familiar. Tingzi. He turned around and shouted, the echo of the mirror array lengthening his voice like a mockery. Guan Ting panted and rushed out of the fork in the road, the detector in his hand still beeping, sweat mixed with dust on his face. Youkai. The pulses in this ghost place are jumping wildly. I almost got lost. His eyes fell on the shadowless woman, and his engineer's intuition immediately alerted him, who are you? How did you get in? This maze is not an elementary school reunion. He squeezed next to Youkai, shoulder to shoulder, like two brothers blocking the wind. The detector was pointed at Ino, and an abnormal heat source reading popped up on the screen, not human body temperature, but low-frequency pulsation, like the ghost waves in an old radio. Inoa did not move and sighed softly, Guan Ting, right? Youkai mentioned you, that best friend who always fixes broken things. My name is Inoa, and I am indeed an old acquaintance of his. This is not the time to chat, the roar of the undead is about to spread. The professor has already been transformed into a living corpse, his bloodline made all the mechanisms of the ancient tomb come alive. We have to look through this album together to find a way to crack it. She took out the album again and handed it to Youkai. The runes on the cover flickered like ancient tattoos under the flashlight. Guan Ting frowned, grabbed the detector and scanned the photo album, old acquaintance. It sounds like a ghost story to deceive children. Let me verify, this thing is made of metal. The thermal sensor shows that it is heating, like there is a circuit inside. Impossible, this is paper. His fingers quickly adjusted the instrument, and the curve on the screen skyrocketed. Youkai, don't touch it. The radiation value of this thing is ridiculously high, like a charged antique. What if it is a trap? How can she prove that she is not an accomplice of those shadows? A hint of sadness flashed in Enoch's eyes. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing a faint scar on her arm, an old rune-shaped wound, as if it had been carved on it. Okay, let me tell you. The professor is not my father, but he is a distant relative of my uncle. The dynasty's bloodline has been scattered for more than 1,000 years, and our family is a branch. We guard this photo album as a family heirloom. I showed you this album when you were a child, but I didn't tell you the truth. It not only records photos, but also hides the memories of the dead in every page. When the professor broke into the tomb, triggered the curse, and his blood connected my family. I felt his cry for help, so I followed him. She opened the booklet, and the photo on the first page slowly came to life. In the black and white image, the professor was standing in front of the ancient tomb in the forest, with a bright smile, and next to him was a man in a robe, Inoa's ancestor. The shadow at the edge of the photo began to squirm, stretching out tentacle-like black threads, and a roar erupted from the page, as deep as thunder. Blood, come back. Damn it. Guan Ting backed away, and the detector beeped wildly. This is not an illusion, the instrument detected electromagnetic pulse. The photo is generating a field, like a homemade curse app. He grabbed a spare wire and tried to short-circuit the surrounding mirrors, but the black wire had already sprung out and entangled the three of them. Youkai reacted quickly and pushed Guan Ting away. Tingzi, get out of the way. He rushed forward and smashed the edge of the album with his backpack. The black thread broke and screamed sharply, but more undead emerged from the mirror wall, a distorted reflection of the past. The professor's face turned into a half-corpse, his mouth opened and spit out black mist. In the background was the phantom of the dynasty's palace collapsing, mixed with the quarrels of Yokai's childhood. You have caused us, the crime of blood. Youkai hesitated for a moment and did not accept the booklet, but stared at Inoa. Tingzi is right. You loved telling ghost stories when you were in elementary school, and you always brought an old photo album to scare people. But now, why do you suddenly show up? What does the professor's bloodline have to do with you? Don't show off, and make it clear, or we will go on our own. His tone was firm. He was no longer the curious student. The courage to smash the mirror just now was still burning in his blood, giving him a little more backbone. The roar behind the mirror wall seemed to be urging, and the air was filled with the smell of moldy tomb soil, mixed with the stench of sewers in the city, making people think of the gutter behind the temple in my hometown. Ino didn't panic. She pointed to the second page. Look here. This is the key to the mechanism, the shadow maze of the dynasty, which reflects the inner fear, but the blood runes can break it. The photo came to life, and an ancient mirror appeared, with the frame engraved with runes. She stretched out her hand and pressed it on the corresponding position on the mirror wall. Follow me and say, shadows disperse and blood awakens, lost paths return to unity. This is an ancestral incantation. Her voice trembled, with a local accent, like her grandma chanting sutras back home. The runes lit up, and the mirror cracked a gap, revealing a side passage, not a dead end, but a passage leading to the depths of the maze. Youkai's heartbeat was beating like a drum, and he asked, your family's bloodline is also cursed. Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Did you know this when you were in elementary school? Curiosity aroused again, but this time it was not a blind rush, but to protect everyone. He pulled Guan Ting up and stood in front of Inoue. Fragments of black silk were still floating in the air. The roar spread and was no longer limited to the maze. The siren of the city came from the distance and blended in, as if the boundaries of reality were blurring. The lights of the road outside the mountain forest actually flickered in the mirror. Inoue followed up and said in a low voice, thank you for protecting me, Youkai. When you were a child, you always said you would be a hero, and now it seems that you have done it. My secret is that the bloodline allows me to see the past of the undead, but it will also devour me. After the professor turns into a corpse, I will be next. But with you, I can hold on. She turned to the third page. In the photo, the family tree of the descendants of the dynasty was twisted, and the branches and leaves turned into zombie arms, grabbing at the end of the passage. The roar grew louder, emerging from the crack at the edge of the mirror wall, and the shadow maze began to disintegrate. The wall shattered like glass, and the fragments reflected more phantoms. Guan Ting's bridge collapsed, Youkai's father's fist shadow, and Inoue's ancestors roared in the tomb. The air vibrated, like a precursor to an earthquake. Black mist seeped into the cracks. The real urban noise was faintly introduced, and the sound of car horns mixed with the cries of ghosts. Run! The edge is collapsing. Youkai yelled. He pushed Guan Ting and Inoue forward, crushing the lenses under his footsteps, and the sharp sound was like cracking bones. The fear of isolation just now was gone, replaced by the passion for protection. He remembered the professor's words, growing up is not about not being afraid, but growing up after being afraid. The black silk thread came from behind and wrapped around his calf. He gritted his teeth and shook it off. Leave me alone, take the photo album and go first. Tingzi, the detector will show the way. Guan Ting turned around and pulled him. Fool, come together. You are our archaeological head, lost. No one can do it. Inoue's rune light protected the three of them, and the core chamber vaguely appeared in the depths of the passage, but the edge of disintegration came like a tide. The outline of a living corpse formed in the fog, roaring straight to the head, and everything was on the verge of collapse. Youkai's legs were still numb, and the touch of the black silk was like ice needles piercing his bones, but he gritted his teeth and rushed forward, holding Guan Ting's arm with his right hand and protecting Inoue's shoulder with his left hand. The three of them stumbled and squeezed into the depths of the passage. The vague outline of the core room appeared like a vague dream. The door frame was covered with vine-like runes and shone with a sickly green light. The roar from behind was like a wild beast chasing after him, and the sound of the mirror wall shattering was like firecrackers exploding, with fragments raining down and piercing the air. Black mist seeped in, carrying the smell of moldy earth, mixed with the smell of gasoline from the distant city. Wait, how is that possible? Why is there the muffled sound of car horns deep in the mountains and forests? Guan Ting gasped and put away the detector. It has been verified that the pulse of this photo album is consistent with the professor's archaeological records and is not a fake. But her motive, let's go first. Youkai, you have become smarter and don't fall headlong. He patted his friend on the shoulder. The engineer's rationality stabilized the three of them, and scanned the new channel as they walked. The heat source is in front, the professor's signal is stronger, but he has obvious signs of becoming a living corpse, and the instrument shows an erratic heartbeat. Guan Ting lowered his head and glanced at the instrument. The curves on the screen were running wild, like an electrocardiogram going out of control. I'm holding on, but the signal is interfering. Damn it, there's electromagnetic noise in this fog, it's like the whole maze is going crazy. The core room is just 50 meters ahead, but the path is changing, and the mirror is reorganized. He quickened his pace and bumped into Youkai with his shoulder. The two of them pushed each other forward like they were racing on the river embankment when they were children. Enuo followed closely, the rune scars on her sleeves glowing faintly. She muttered the solution to the spell in a low voice, the shadows dispersed and the blood awakened, the lost souls returned to unity. The mirror walls on both sides of the passage began to twist. They were no longer rigid reflections, but came to life, shaking like ripples on the water. Tingzi, can your detector still hold up? Where is the heat source? Youkai asked breathlessly, with a hint of calmness in his voice. He was no longer the panicked student just now. He glanced at Enoch. The photo album in her arms was slightly hot, as if it was pulsing, and the black mist on the edge of the page was still slowly spreading. Suddenly, the first apparition of fear emerged. Yokai's eyes were dazzled. The old living room at home was reflected in the mirror. His father's fist was raised high, and his mother's cry echoed, "You are an unfilial son, you always get into trouble." That was the memory of him sneaking to the river to play when he was a child, and being beaten when he came home. His father's face was twisted into a gray corpse, and his eyes were covered with black threads. "Youkai, you have sinned against our bloodline." Phantom roared, reaching out to grab his chest. Yokai's heart tightened and his step staggered. His childhood guilt flashed through his mind. He always thought curiosity was harmless, but he unknowingly hurt his family. "Youkai! Don't look!" Ino yelled, grabbing his arm and digging her nails into his flesh. "That's the trick of the shadow maze, reflecting the darkest corners of your heart. Don't believe it, it's sucking your strength." Her voice was urgent, like the way she pulled him away from school pranks in elementary school, and there was a trace of gentle old light in her eyes. Guan Ting was not spared. His mirror phantom was a collapsed bridge. In the campus engineering project he designed, the steel bars broke and students fell screaming. "No. That's not true. I've calculated it. The wind load is no problem." He murmured, his face turned pale, and the detector slipped from his hand and hit the ground with a crisp sound. In the phantom, he stood by the broken bridge, his self-reproaching roar echoing, "You failed, Guan Ting. How many people were killed by the disgrace of engineers?" Sweat dripped down the bridge of his nose, his rational brain was like a short-circuited circuit, his hands trembled when he picked up the instrument, but he pressed the wrong button, and the screen exploded with sparks. Ino's fear was more subtle. She didn't shout, but her face was as pale as paper. Her mirror reflected the family's old house. The corpses of her ancestors climbed up from the floor, and bloodline runes were wrapped around them like chains. "Inua, you can't escape. The curse will swallow you like it swallowed your uncle." She hugged the photo album tightly, her fingers trembling, and a painful low moan squeezed out of her throat. "I have known since I was a child that this bloodline is the shackles of the family. Lock. Every time I look through the photo album, it feels like I am digging out my own heart. I was the one who caused the professor's cry for help." Her eyes were moist, and she turned to look at Youkai. "Do you remember? On the day I graduated from elementary school, I wanted to tell you everything, but I was afraid that you would laugh at me as a ghost story. Now I can't hold on anymore, it's pulling me over." "Tingzi, wake up. That's a lie. How many times have you saved us?" Youkai came to his senses, shook off his phantom, kicked the mirror and broke it, and the fragments scattered like ice shards. He turned around and supported Guan Ting with a firm voice, "Remember that camping trip in freshman year? The tent you built blocked the heavy rain, so we didn't get soaked in the rain. Don't let these ghosts tear you apart." Guan Ting blinked, took a breath, and nodded, "Yes, damn, how could I get hit? Go, don't stop." Eno took a deep breath and turned to the fourth page of the photo album. The photo came to life, the shadow maze of the dynasty. The mirrors were interlaced like a maze, and each line was marked with runes. "Look, here. There are 3 layers of multi-mirrors. The first layer reflects fear, the second layer distorts it, and the third layer connects to the core of the ancient tomb. We have to break it in order of the runes. Smash the mirror on the left first, saying, 'Blood returns to shadow.'" She pointed to the left side of the passage, where runes appeared on a mirror wall. The 3 of them worked together, wrapped stones with Guan Ting's spare wires, and smashed the first side. The lens collapsed, revealing a fork in the road. The roar of the phantom weakened a bit, but the black fog became thicker, and the illusion of the distant city seeped in. Reflections of high-rise buildings flashed in the mirror, police sirens shrilled, passers-by screamed and turned into living corpses, and the boundaries of reality were torn apart like paper. Youkai's heart tightened, he stopped and gently held her wrist. No, I remember. You always wore that red string bracelet, saying it was a talisman. Don't be afraid, this time I am not a little devil, I will protect you. Tell me, how to guide the photo album. Let's solve this maze together." There was an added weight of responsibility in his words, from an impulse of curiosity to a stable pillar, like a boy who has grown up, starting to shoulder what he has to shoulder. "This fog is spreading, not only the maze, but also the outside is affected." Guan Ting regained the detector. Although the edge of the instrument was burnt, he managed to bypass the circuit. The heat source showed that the professor was at the end of the second floor. His pulse was like a heart twitching, confirming the form of a living corpse. "Youkai, we have to hurry, otherwise, the entire city outside the mountain forest will become a ghost land." They passed through the second layer of mirror, and the phantom was even more fierce. Youkai saw his father's fist again, but this time he shouted, "Dad, I was wrong, but I will change it. It's not your fault." When he smashed the mirror, he felt less guilty and his sense of responsibility was burning. The passage in the middle was as narrow as a coffin, the air was stuffy and the sweat stuck to my back. Guan Ting was exploring the way forward when the detector suddenly beeped wildly and the screen went completely black. "No. The battery is overloaded. This electromagnetic field is too strong and my homemade circuit burned out." He cursed and struck the instrument, but sparks flew out, the mirror wall on one side of the passage collapsed, and black mist poured in, pushing Guan Ting to the side passage. "Tingzi." Youkai stretched out his hand to grab it, but only touched the air. Guan Ting's shout came from the fog, I'm stuck. Go rescue the professor, you go first, I will catch up." "Professor." Youkai rushed forward. In the hallucination, the professor's claws were grabbing at him. He ducked away, and the sense of responsibility in his heart burst out. "Teacher, I'm here to save you. Tell me how to destroy the stone." The professor's living corpse roared even louder, and the black mist enveloped him. "No," she cried out in pain, "it's pulling me, the blood is connected." Youkai hugged her, and the emotions of old acquaintances surged. She was always the quiet girl in elementary school, and the look in her eyes when she shared secrets made his heart beat, but they lost contact because of the move. No, hold on. You said when we were children, we are partners, and we are the same now. I won't let you carry it alone." His words warmed her ears, and Inua's eyes were filled with tears. "Youkai, thank you. I liked your stupidity back then, and now you have become a hero." They worked together to push away the professor's living corpse, and Guan Ting's shout could be heard faintly in the fog, "I fixed it," at the back. But the door to the core room at the end of the passage was already open, and the black fog was spinning like a whirlpool. The illusion of the city became more real, a series of car accidents on the viaduct in the mirror, living corpses, passers-by roaring, reality distorted like a nightmare. The professor's corpse form rushed towards you, his claws brushed against Youkai's arm, and blood seeped out. He felt his strength draining away, but the fire of responsibility burned even brighter. We have to go in and destroy the stone. Tingzi, hold on. The roar shook the wall, and the green light of the soul stone leaked from the crack in the door. Everything was hanging on the edge of destruction. Youkai took a deep breath of the sultry air, and green light burst out from the crack in the door, licking the darkness like a poisonous snake's tongue. He kicked open the half-closed stone door. The blood marks on his arms were still aching, but there was only one thought in his mind: go in and destroy the damn stone. Ino stood close behind him, holding the photo album to her chest like a makeshift shield. The professor's living corpse form lingered at the door, his rotten face twisted into a roar, his claws scratching in the air, and the black mist whipped against the stone wall like a whip. Blood, return. Intermittent whispers were squeezed out of its throat. It was no longer a pure beast's roar, but had the smell of curses in ancient dynasty words, making the back of Youkai's neck shiver. No, protect yourself. Youkai growled, pushing away the professor's dead hand, feeling the touch was like a dead branch breaking. He dodged into the room, and Inoue followed. The two were back to back, and they heard Guan Ting's shouts getting closer and closer in the fog behind them. Youkai. Wait for me, the fog has cleared, I have repaired the instrument. Guan Ting finally rushed out of the side passage, sweating profusely, holding the detector in his hand, with burnt smoke rising from the edges. He gasped and slammed into the door, and the three of them were finally reunited, crowded side by side at the entrance to the core room. The room is as wide as a palace, with a towering throne in the center, and a fist-sized soul stone looming underneath, pulsing with green light like a living heart. The surrounding mirror walls are no longer fragments of the maze, but a complete circle, reflecting a distorted image. The tall urban buildings outside tilt in the mirror, the street lights flash blood red, and there are vague sirens and screams. The panic of separation was like a knife. Youkai turned to look at Inoue. The blood runes on her face were hot, as if they were burning. No, we can't leave him. He pulled her forward, but his steps were heavy. In the fog, the professor's living corpse form emerged. The originally elegant mentor was now half-rotten, with red eyes, open mouth and black mist, roaring like thunder. The bloodline, the core is under the throne. The soul stone of the dynasty, destroy it, but the price, is blood. The professor's voice broke intermittently, revealing the secret of the tomb. The core is a 1,000-year soul stone, which absorbs the blood of descendants and resurrects the undead. Destroying it can break the curse, but it will backfire on the guardians. Guan Ting shook his head and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Hold on, but this instrument is about to expire. The heat source is all pointing under the throne. The radiation from the stone is like a nuclear reactor, and the electromagnetic waves go straight outside. The image in the mirror is not an illusion, something is really going on outside. He raised the detector, and intermittent flashes flashed on the screen. The wireless signal was like eavesdropping on the TV news. Listen. There has been a sudden change in the center of Taipei. Citizens reported seeing black fog filling the air, zombie-like crowds rioting at the high-speed rail station, the police cordoning off the surrounding mountains and forests. Damn it, the curse has spread. We have to destroy the rocks quickly, otherwise the whole city will turn into a ghost town. Inou's face was as pale as paper. She knelt beside the throne and opened the last few pages of the album. The photo is no longer a static family image, but has been activated into a blood sacrifice ceremony of the dynasty. The ancients used a dagger to cut open the palms, and blood dripped on the soul stone. The undead sprang out of the stone, and the roar was twisted into a whisper. The air pays with blood. Her fingers trembled, touching the page. The rune scars burned like fire. Youkai, Tingzi, listen to me. The depth of this album is a bloodline diary, not just a random photo. It records the uncle, the teacher. The ancestors of the dynasty are the descendants of the tombkeepers of the dynasty. The soul stone absorbs the blood to resurrect the dead and destroy it. The uncle is the last one. He was pulled into the living corpse by the stone just to be a sacrifice. I am also a side branch, and I feel that it is calling me. Her voice was broken, and there was fear in her eyes, but she looked at Youkai with a little more trust, like the one who shared the lunchbox in elementary school. Sacrifice? Are you kidding? Guan Ting's voice rose, and his rational brain seemed to be eroded by whispers. He stared at the mirror wall, and his future was reflected in a mirror. He was lying in the hospital, the instruments were beeping, and the doctor shook his head. The engineer's failure, the radiation overload destroyed you. It was a harbinger of death, and the black mist crawled out of the mirror and wrapped around his ankles. No. I can't die like this. I still have projects to finish. My parents are waiting for me to go back and repair the water pipes. He took a step back, smashed the detector on the ground, and held his head in his hands. His usual calmness collapsed, exposing the fragility in his heart. That strong man from the science and engineering department who was always in assembly was also afraid of being alone and that all his efforts would be in vain. Youkai, this is crazy. What should we do? Will throwing stones kill Noonyuo? Or will the city be destroyed? The roar of the living corpse suddenly erupted, no longer in the form of a single professor, but in groups emerging from behind the mirror wall. More than a dozen rotten figures rushed toward him, with black threads hanging from their skin. They opened their mouths and spat out distorted whispers, blood pays, lost, death. Their voices were like curses, gnawing into the head, like countless insects gnawing at them. The professor's corpse took the lead and clawed at Ino. She screamed, the album fell, and the pages turned into black mist. Yokai's heart tightened, and old emotions were ignited like fire. He couldn't let anything happen to her. He picked up a broken stone pillar and stood in front of Inoa. Tingzi, wake up. Don't listen to those nonsense, your head is our strongest weapon. Noonyuo, tell me how to break the mechanism, I will try it with my archaeological knowledge. His words were as solid as a rock, and he was more cautious in his bravery. Don't rush in, listen to your partners first. Tingzi, are you okay? The fog almost swallowed you up just now. Youkai patted Guan Ting on the shoulder, with a hint of the calmness of a leader in his voice. He was no longer the student who rushed in with only his passion. The professor's assertion flashed through his mind, and he began to weigh, rush up and throw stones? Or should we stabilize the situation first? His curiosity is still burning, but now it's mixed with caution, just like his father's warning when he taught him to climb a tree when he was a child. Don't be impatient, step firmly before moving. Guan Ting gritted his teeth and picked up the detector. Although the screen was cracked, he knocked a few times and restarted the circuit. Damn it. I'll hold on. Youkai, you take the lead, I'll scan the path, and Nunuo will protect the edge of the stone. His voice was still shaking, but friendship was like an anchor to bring him back to reason. The vulnerability exposed made him more like a brother than a machine. The three of them formed a triangle. Youkai waved the stone pillar in front and smashed away the first wave of living corpses. The professor's claws grazed his shoulder and blood spattered, but he did not retreat. The diagram from the archaeology class flashed back in his mind. There are always blood sacrificial locks in dynasty tombs, and the order of rotation is to avoid backlash. Southeast. He shouted, stepped on the throne base, kicked away the living corpse, and turned the first rune slot. The green light of the stone flashed, and the mirror wall reflected his omen of the future. He fell in a pool of blood, Inoa cried, but Youkai shook his head, false. It was a trick to prevent me from succeeding. The inner monologue was short, don't panic, bravery is not recklessness, it is to protect them. The whispers became louder, death, blood pays. The crowd of living corpses surged, and Guan Ting was knocked down by one, with rotten hands grabbing his collar. No. I don't want to die here, like my dad, who died alone in a construction accident. He exposed more vulnerability, and the usually repressed childhood shadow, his father's accident, made him afraid of failure and loneliness. But Youkai rushed over, smashed the corpse's hand open with a pillar, and pulled him up. Tingzi, remember that night when we were sophomores, we stayed up all night to repair the robot? You said that failure is for the better. Get up and go to the northwest. Guan Ting gasped and nodded, yes. I don't, it can collapse. Nuo, from the perspective of bloodline, where is the weak point of the stone? Inua knelt down, pressed the stone with her palm, and the bloodline rune lit up. The weak point is in the middle crack. Use a dagger, it is in the album. She tore off a page, turned the paper into an ancient dagger, and handed it to Youkai. The pace of the chase is like a racing heart, the roars and whispers of living corpses are intertwined, and the changes in the city in the mirror are becoming clearer. News footage flashes, in which black fog engulfs the MRT station, passers-by turn into corpses, and the announcer's voice trembles. The rumors of ancient tombs in the mountains have come true, experts are calling for evacuation. The supernatural spreads like a virus, and the boundaries of reality are shattered. Youkai turned the last groove, Vulcan cut Shadow Jew. The stone cracked with green light, and the living zombies froze, but the backlash came. The black mist rebounded and wrapped around Inua. She cried out in pain, it's sucking my blood. Youkai, stab it in. Youkai held the dagger, and his hand shook, be careful. He hesitated for a moment, but the responsibility of growing up pushed him to take a step forward. No, I won't let you sacrifice. Let's work together. He pierced the crack, the stone cracked like thunder, green light exploded, and the living corpses turned to ashes, but the whisper echoed, the price is not over yet. Enoch gasped and got up, holding on to Yokai's arm. Okay, there is a mechanism under the throne, and the stone is embedded in the blood tank, rotating in the order of the dynasty runes, first southeast, northwest, and chant, Bulls cut Shadow Jew. But whispers will amplify fear, and shadows will show the appearance of death in the future. Don't look. She provided the bloodline perspective, narrowing her eyes as if sensing the pulse of the stone. I feel, Uncle's soul is still struggling in the stone, and he wants us to destroy it, even if the cost is high. The three gasped and fell to the ground. The mirror wall began to disintegrate, and the phantom of the city faded, but the police sirens were still ringing in the distance. Guan Ting helped Inua up. No, are you okay? We did it. Inua smiled weakly. Uncle's soul was loosened. But the root of the curse was not broken, and the stone was broken, but it was scattered into pieces. There is still chaos outside, we have to get out. Youkai stood up, his arm was bleeding, but his eyes were firm. Let's go. Tingzi explores the way, Nuo relies on me. The city is waiting for our rescue. Outside the passage, the roar was faint again, and the black mist was chasing after him. Everything was still hanging on the edge of uncertainty. Youkai held Inua's waist, feeling that her body temperature was like the residual heat after a fever subsided, and she was weak but still holding on. The three of them staggered out of the core room. The stone walls of the passage began to tremble, and gravel rained down. The echo of the distant siren was mixed with a low roar, like a beast grinding its teeth deep in the forest. Guan Ting led the way, the detector in his hand was buzzing, and red dots were flashing on the screen. The passage is shrinking, and the density of black fog has increased by 30%. We have to find a side road, otherwise we will be blocked. His voice still had the aftertaste of the collapse just now, but his eyes had already locked onto the instrument, as if grasping a life-saving straw. Suddenly, a strange blue light lit up at the end of the passage. It was not the afterglow of the green mist, but the reflection of the mirror wall, twisting into an endless corridor. Roaring sounds came like a tide, coming from all directions: blood, return, guard. The three of them stopped, and Guan Ting raised the detector, heat source. 50 meters ahead, there is a large-scale radiation gathering. That is the deepest core of the ancient tomb, an extension of the throne room, the tomb guard hall. Yokai's heart sank. He had heard in the archaeology class that the last floor of the dynasty mausoleum was a guard area, full of hallucination mechanisms designed to torture intruders. He held Inua's hand tightly. No, Nua, can you lead the way from the bloodline perspective you mentioned? We can't bump into each other again. Ino nodded, pressed the album with her palm, and the runes lit up. She closed her eyes and sensed, go straight and avoid the group of mirrors on the left. That is the source of hallucinations, which will amplify the ghosts in your heart. But I feel that my uncle's shadow is still leading them. As soon as she finished speaking, countless figures appeared in the blue light, the photos in the album came to life. Those yellowed family images burst out from the pages of the book and turned into an army of living corpses. The rotten faces were twisted into the appearance of dynasty nobles, and the robes were broken into black threads and fluttered. They did not rush at random, but moved forward in formation, and the leader was the living corpse form of the professor, but this time it was more complete, with green eyes shining, and an organized roar with its mouth open. Successor, repay the blood debt, the labyrinth will last forever. The professor's paw pointed at Ino, as if calling, and the legion followed, and his footsteps were like drums hitting the stone ground. Oh my God, those photos, they are alive. Guan Ting took a step back, and the detector beeped wildly. The radiation peak, the hallucination is not fake, they are connecting to reality through the photo album. The zombie army approached, and the corpse soldiers in the first row stretched out their withered hands to grab Guan Ting's ankle, and the black mist was wrapped like a vine. He ducked away, but the mirror wall reflected his fear, the accidental reappearance of his childhood father, and in the firelight of the engineering accident, his little figure cried out, "Dad, why did you leave me?" The hallucination was like a needle pricking his brain. You will fail too, Tingzi, you will never be able to fix this damn place. Guan Ting knelt down and held his head in his hands. No. I am not that child anymore. Youkai, help me, my mind is messed up. Youkai's heart tightened, friendship was like an iron chain holding him. He rushed forward and kicked away the attacking corpse soldiers. There was a crisp sound of broken bones. Tingzi, get up. Remember when we were in college, you repaired a broken model car and I helped you re-weld it? It was a team, not one person. He pulled Guan Ting up, his voice as steady as an anchor. Look at the instrument, seal the passage. Your engineering brain is our only way out. Guan Ting. Ting gasped and nodded. He took out the spare circuit board from his backpack with shaking hands and soldered it while retreating. Yeah. I'll try it. Use electromagnetic pulse to seal the side road and block part of the legion. His fingers flew quickly, sparks flew, and he returned to his usual rationality, but his eyes were red. Youkai, thank you. What I'm afraid of is not death, but leaving you behind, like Dad did. Ino was forced into a corner by the professor's living corpse. The photo album fell and the pages opened automatically. More photos came to life, scenes of dynastic blood sacrifices popped up, nobles cut themselves with daggers, and drops of blood formed a river. The professor roared, Noor, the bloodline is unified, you have hidden it for too long. Ino screamed, her back hit the mirror wall, and the hallucination reflected her secret. In elementary school, the picture of her and Youkai sharing lunch was distorted into blood red, her palms were cut open, and the album was stained with blood. I am a direct descendant of the professor, uncle. My uncle is not a distant relative, he is my father's brother. I have hidden this photo album since I was a child, because blood will summon the undead. I'm afraid of dragging you down, Youkai. Her voice trembled, tears mixed with blood. I'm sorry, I wanted to carry it alone and destroy the stone. But now, it knows me. Tingzi, slow down, Nono can't walk fast. Youkai reminded in a low voice, blood oozing from the wound on his arm and sticking to Nono's arm. She leaned on his shoulder and gasped, thanks, Youkai. I can hold on. My uncle's soul is loosened, but those fragments, they are like viruses, scattered throughout the maze. We have to catch up and destroy the core source, otherwise the city is really over. Her words were broken, and her eyes glanced at the fallen photo album. It closed automatically after the stone shattered, and the runes on the cover were still glowing slightly, as if breathing. The zombie army surged forward, roaring like thunder, and the shadow maze began to collapse. The mirror wall cracked, and fragments fell like rain, reflecting the chaos of the city. On the streets of Taipei, black fog swallowed up the traffic, passers-by turned into corpses, and news helicopters hovered. The curse of the ancient tomb spreads, and the army enters the mountain. The atmosphere of terror reached its peak, and the air was filled with putrid odors and whispers, crawling into the ears like insects. Guan Ting's device finally lit up, and electromagnetic waves shot out like a net, sealing the left passage. Dozens of living corpses were bounced back and turned into black smoke. It's done. But the energy is not enough, it can only block half of it. Youkai, you have to face the professor's shadow directly and destroy the source of the mirror. The core mirror is in the center of the hall. If you smash it, the illusion will be broken. The professor's zombie leader rushed towards her, clawing at Ino's neck. Blood payment. She struggled, blood runes burning her palms. Youkai, use the dagger from the photo album. But it will backfire on your fear, face it head on. Youkai picked up the fallen ancient dagger and rushed into the center of the army. Stone pillars were swung to smash open the corpse soldiers, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. He faced the professor's eyes directly, and the green light reflected his ultimate hallucination. In front of his childhood father's grave, he knelt down and blamed himself. It's all because of your curiosity, Youkai, you can never save people. The whisper amplified, loser, die alone. Fear surged, but he gritted his teeth, false. Dad taught me to be brave, not to be reckless, but to protect what you want to protect. He shook his head and pierced the central mirror with the dagger. That was the source, a giant mirror reflecting the army of living corpses. Youkai was stunned as the professor's claws grazed his face, leaving a burning scar. Trust was shattered like glass, and old memories flashed through his mind. Enoch was always mysterious and avoided parties, but now he understood, the shackles of a bloodline curse. No, why didn't you tell me earlier? We are partners. His tone was mixed with anger and distress, not blame, but the sting of being hidden. I thought you were an old acquaintance, but I didn't expect you to carry such a heavy burden. But now, tell me how to destroy the source. There was a brief flash in his heart. We can't collapse, she is a family member, not a burden. The shattering sound of the mirror was like the disintegration of the world, with fragments flying everywhere. The zombie army froze, and the professor's roar turned into an intermittent wail. Noel is broken, but the root is in the blood. The army turned into ashes, and the black mist receded, but the walls of the maze continued to collapse, and the passage shook like an earthquake. Inoue got up and hugged Yokai's waist. I'm sorry. I should have believed you earlier. Blood connection is not a curse, but a power. Let's destroy the roots together. In her eyes, fear turned to determination, old emotions were rekindled like fire, and her dependence on him deepened into a partner's oath. Guan Ting gasped and leaned against the wall. The device was smoking, the passage is sealed, but the front is still hot. Youkai, no, we trust each other and rush out. Friendship deepens in crisis, like a blade forged from iron. The three of them held hands and stepped through the broken mirror. Although the roar was weak, there was a faint whisper in the distance, the price is coming. Amidst the roar of the collapse of the maze, they approached the last glimmer of life in the ancient tomb. Black mist followed them like a shadow, and everything hung on the edge of collapse. Broken mirrors covered the passage, like countless broken memories crunching underfoot. The three of them rushed forward hand in hand. Youkai felt the sweat on his palms was sticky, Guan Ting's breathing was as rapid as a broken bellows, and Inoue's fingertips were slightly hot, as if something was still burning in his blood. Their footsteps echoed in the roar of collapse, the black mist wrapped around their ankles like a living thing, and the distant whispers were like the whispers of ghosts. The price is coming. Youkai gritted his teeth. Don't stop. Tingzi, can your detector still work? We have to find the exit, over there in the city. I heard the siren, it's not a good sign. They turned the last corner, and the entrance to the passage suddenly opened up, and the cold wind mixed with the smell of earth and putrefaction hit their faces. Outside the exit was a dense mountain forest. The moonlight shone down, but it was dyed a strange grey-blue color by the black mist. Youkai was the first to crawl out and stepped on the wet leaves. He looked up and his heart suddenly sank. The city lights in the distance should have been twinkling like stars, but now they were in chaos. On the edge of Taipei, on the road near the high-speed rail station, car lights flickered, screams were faintly heard, black shadows poured out of the forest like a tide, and the roars of living corpses echoed in the night sky, like wild wolves grinding their teeth on the edge of the city. Roar, blood, return. Those shadows are not mere illusions, they devour reality. A truck overturned, the driver climbed out but turned into a rotten form, stretched out his claws to grab pedestrians on the roadside, black mist climbed up the street lamp like a vine, and the light twisted into a green glow. Guan Ting gasped and shook off a cloud of black mist. The instrument trembled in his hand, yes. But the signal is messed up. The black mist seeped into the electronic components, like a virus eating the wires. The heat source showed. There was a big hole 200 meters ahead, which might be the back of the ancient tomb. The door leads directly to the mountain forest. But the radiation level is off the charts, and the outside is no longer the same world. His voice was mixed with fatigue, and his eyes were red and swollen. The hallucination just now was still echoing in his mind, but he held on, as if he was afraid that he would completely collapse if he let go. Ino came out last, and she picked up the fallen photo album. The runes on the cover were dimmed, but the pages were still turning slightly. She leaned against the tree trunk and panted, her face as pale as paper. No, it's not too late. My uncle's shadow is broken, but its root is in the bloodline altar. It is the last organ of the dynasty, hidden behind the tomb guard hall deep in the maze. The last page of the album, it will guide the way. She opened the book, and the air was filled with the musty smell of old paper. The last page was not a photo, but a yellowed blood picture, a sketch of an ancient altar, with a stone platform in the center, runes carved around it, and a river of blood gathering into a whirlpool. A red light flashed on the picture, pointing to a huge stone deep in the forest. That's right there. The blood sacrifice is the eternal curse of the dynasty, and the uncle's soul stone is just the trigger. It must be destroyed with a blood ritual, otherwise the living corpses will swallow up the entire Taipei, just like the bloody night when the dynasty fell. Damn it, the curse has spread. After Guan Ting crawled out, he knelt on the ground. The detector screen flashed a red alarm. There are more than 50 heat source points on the edge of the city. They sprang out from the ancient tombs and invaded through the fragments of the shadow maze. The news app can still be connected, and the title was, Mutation in the Mountainous Area, Sighting of Living Corpses. The army blocked the area around 101. Youkai, are we too late? His voice trembled, and for the first time, the rational engineer's head was really stuck, and the fear of abandonment from his childhood came up again, like a black mist in his heart. Youkai stared at the photo album, and a brief flash occurred in his heart. From a curious student, to now, he has become a decision-maker. There was no further hesitation, the eyes of his companions were all looking at him. No, how do you do the ceremony you mentioned? Tingzi, we can't waste it here, the living corpses are already on their way. He pulled Guan Ting up, his voice as steady as a mountain. Remember when we were in college, we teamed up for an archaeological camping trip? When there was a heavy rain, you repaired the tent, and I kept the fire. We can always get through it. It's the same this time, your engineering brain helped us open the way. Guan Ting wiped the sweat from his forehead and nodded, okay, but the exit is still collapsed at the edge of the maze, and I have to repair it. The black fog has corroded the structure, like acid rain eating away at the iron bridge. I can use spare batteries and build a temporary support, but it will drain my sanity, and the instrument will backfire. The hallucination will be more intense. He smiled bitterly. It's like when I was a kid, I repaired the wires in my house by myself, and I fainted from the electric shock. I'm afraid, but I'm even more afraid of leaving you behind. He squatted down, took out the tools from his backpack, and started welding metal rods and wires. Sparks danced in the black mist, like fireworks at night. A distant roar approached, and the zombie army sprang out from the forest. The leader was still the living zombie form of the professor, even more broken. The green eyes were flickering, and the mouth opened to let out intermittent roars, Noor, repay, the altar, forever. The shadow of the corpse soldier behind it twisted, swallowing the trees, and the branches and leaves turned into withered claws and pounced. Supernatural elements spread like a nightmare, shadows climbed up from the ground, splashed like ink, and swallowed up a fleeing motorcycle. The night's scream stopped abruptly, leaving only the skeleton emerging from the black mist. Youkai nodded and held her hand tightly. No, we are a team. The blood dead is not yours alone, I will share it. He turned to Guan Ting. Tingzi, hold on. Repair the exit, and we will go straight to the altar. Guan Ting's welding accelerated, but the illusion began to bite back. His vision was blurred, his father's shadow emerged, and he whispered in the firelight, you can't fix it, son. It will always fail. He gritted his teeth, and the veins on his forehead popped out. Get away. Dad, I am not a child anymore. I have to protect my brother. Sanity drained away like an hourglass, his hands shook violently, a wire broke, and electricity rushed into his body. He groaned, knelt down and vomited blood, but the support was still erected, the exit of the maze was temporarily stabilized, and the black mist was blocked by the electromagnetic net. The zombie army rushed towards him, and the professor's claws went straight for Youkai, his rotten nails scratched through the air, making a sound of wind. Student, curiosity killed the cat, pay for it. Youkai dodged, picked up a broken branch on the ground and used it as a weapon, and smashed it into the knee of a corpse soldier. The bones cracked loudly. Professor. Wake up, you taught me archaeology for the sake of the truth, not destruction. He shouted while retreating, the growth in his heart was like fire, he was no longer a reckless boy, he had to lead and protect everyone. The professor's green eyes locked onto him, and the hallucination reflected Yokai's fear, his father's tombstone cracked, and the living corpse crawled out, it's your fault. I can never save you. The shadow swallowed reality, and the surrounding trees twisted into claws, grabbing at the three of them. It's coming. The remnant soul of my uncle is still controlling the scene. Ino said sharply. She pressed the photo album and made a bloody opening in her palm. Red liquid dripped on the last page, and the runes lit up like beacons. The bloodline ritual starts with me. Youkai, you have to come with me, use my blood perspective to locate the altar. But the professor will target you, it knows that you are a variable. Her eyes were moist, and her old emotions surged. In elementary school, I always avoided you because I was afraid that my blood would affect you. Now, thank you for not leaving. Youkai, don't fight hard. Use the perspective of the photo album. Enola pulled him, their palms faced each other, the blood stains blended, and the vision changed. The blood map was superimposed on the mountain forest, and the altar emerged, 100 meters in front, a hidden stone platform, with black mist swirling around it like a dragon. I saw it. Go straight and avoid the shadow bush on the left. There is a devouring trap. She guided with a firm voice, and the power of blood connected them like a bridge. The three of them retreated while fighting. Youkai kicked away the professor's claws, and a dagger appeared from the album. He stabbed into the air and cut off a group of shadows. Professor, you are a mentor, not a monster. The blood sacrifice is over, and the dynasty should be laid to rest. The professor roared back, but the legions surged forward. The roar echoed at the edge of the city. The lights of tall buildings in the distance began to flicker, and black mist pressed down like clouds. The mystery was solved and the pursuit went hand in hand, and Yokai's decision was like a beacon. He shouted, no, the ceremony is now. Tingzi, seal the escape route, we go straight to the altar. Inua nodded, blood drops gathered, runes burned the skin of the three people, and the perspective locked on the source, but the professor's the whispers of the remnant souls intensified, the price, the bloodline is broken, the soul is scattered. The horror is like waves, the shadows swallow the trees, the edge of reality cracks, their footsteps approach the altar, the crisis hangs on a thread, the blood river of the dynasty faintly emerges in the black mist, roaring like endless thunder. The three of them stumbled into the depths of the mountain forest. The fallen leaves under their feet were dyed black by the black mist, and they looked like corpses in the mud. Youkai was leading the way. The broken branch in his hand had been broken into half and was stained with blood. He panted and shouted back, "No, hold on. The guidance of the blood map is correct, it's behind the boulder in front." The professor's living corpse form chased after him, his green eyes dancing like will-o'-the-wisps in the night. The roar shook the leaves, blood, return, dynasty, immortal. The legion of corpse soldiers behind him surged in like a tide, and the shadow climbed up from the ground, entangled an old pine tree, and instantly twisted it into bones. The branches whipped through the air like whips, and almost hit Guan Ting's back. Guan Ting ran back and fired the electromagnetic pulse. The detector buzzed and exploded into a cloud of black mist. Damn, these things are like virus programs, specializing in exploiting loopholes. Youkai, there is a heat source trap on the left, go around it. His voice was hoarse. The backlash just now made his face livid, and the corners of his mouth were still bloodshot, but the determination in his eyes was like welded steel bars, which had not loosened even a bit. Enoch held the photo album tightly, the blood on her palm flowing along the page, and the runes glowed red, illuminating the way forward. Yes, that's it. The altar is under the boulder, at the entrance of the blood river. I feel the remnant soul of my uncle pulling me, just like when he pulled my hand to cross the road when I was a child, warm but scary. Her voice trembled, old memories mixed with fear, making the air heavier. The boulder finally appeared in front of us, towering like an ancient tomb keeper, with weathered runes engraved on its surface. A crack opened at the bottom, and black mist gushes out from inside, like the breathing of hell. Youkai kicked off the shadow vines wrapped around his ankles and squeezed into the gap first. Go in. Tingzi, seal the door. The three of them filed in. The passage was so narrow that they could only turn sideways. The walls were stained with blood, like the tears of countless undead souls over the past millennium. Inside is the altar hall, with the central stone platform pulsing like a heart, and the surrounding walls reflecting the twisted fragments of the shadow maze. Each side reflects the bloody night of the dynasty, the palace collapsed, the rebels swung their swords, and the emperor's roar echoed, betrayer, damned forever. The air was filled with the smell of rust, and the roars of living corpses gathered from all directions, reaching their peak, like the speakers in a Taipei night market, but they were howling like ghosts and wolves. This is the route. Eno gasped and knelt in front of the stone platform. The photo album automatically turned to the last page. The blood map came to life, and red lines crawled all over the stone platform like blood vessels. To reverse the ritual, I have to exchange my blood for my uncle's soul stone and break the dynasty's eternal chain. But, it will hurt, like digging out my heart. She looked at Youkai, with tears in her eyes. Little when I was in school, I always pushed you away because I was afraid of the blood debt. My uncle said that the dynasty's betrayal began in the palace. The emperor believed the lies of the traitors and slaughtered the loyal ministers' families, and the curse took root from that river of blood. Now, it is going to swallow us up in the modern era. Her voice was low, with the weight of the family, like the old stories told by the elders during the new year, but it was a living nightmare. Youkai squatted down, held her shoulders, and thought, he can't let her carry it alone. This is his growth. From a curious boy to now, he has to share this damn thing. No, don't be afraid. I'll use your perspective to break it together. The professor is not a monster, he is a victim. He turned to Guan Ting. Tingzi, your engineering brain is here. Use detectors to interfere with these rune pulses, like a hacker attacking the system, forcing the black fog to dissipate. Can the exit bracket hold up? Guan Ting nodded, wiped the sweat from his forehead, squatted by the stone platform, and pointed the detector at the runes. Hold on. But the electromagnetic field here is a mess, like a high-voltage line in a typhoon. I have to overload it, send a big pulse, and explode the shadow chain of the maze. But, it will bite me, and the hallucination will explode my head. He smiled bitterly, and the shadow of his father flashed in his eyes. It's like when I was repairing an electric fan, my fingers were numb, and my father called me stupid. But now, for you, I build this ghost altar. Guan Ting got up and spat out the blood. Hold the stent for 5 minutes. Come on, Youkai, I'll cover the rear. He raised the detector and sent out an electromagnetic pulse, blowing away several chasing corpse soldiers. But his shadow began to distort, and the phantom of his father entangled him. Loser. He shouted, shut up. I'm an engineer, not a waste. The pain of sacrifice made his eyes bloodshot, but friendship was like an anchor, pulling him back to reality. Uncle. Stop. Enoch screamed. She cut her wrist, blood dripped down the stone platform, and the runes lit up like torches. In exchange for blood, eternal life is cut off. The betrayal of the dynasty, starting from the palace massacre, the emperor killed loyal ministers, and the curse has bound our Li family for thousands of years. Now, I will pay with my blood. The blood stains gathered into a vortex, the reversal ceremony was started, the stone platform murmured, and the professor's living corpse froze, his green eyes flickering. Determined, nor, betrayal, the truth. It opened its mouth and spat out the secret intermittently. Back then, I believed in the lie, and massacred the entire Li family, the soul stone, the seal, the price. The pages of the album turned, and the secret was finally revealed. The curse stemmed from dynastic betrayal, the emperor slaughtered blood for eternal life, the descendants of the Li family, such as Inua and Professor, became the living medium of the curse, and the family photo album was the linking chain. Youkai faced the professor directly, rushed forward and grabbed its rotten arm. Professor. Wake up. You taught me archaeology just to dig out the truth, not to repeat the bloody night. Let's pay back the blood debt of the Li family together. The professor's claws struggled and scratched Youkai's arm, blood splattered, but Youkai did not retreat, and his eyes met his green eyes. Remember? In class, you said that the dynasty fell. In internal fighting, we modern people must learn to trust. Nono's blood is breaking, please stop controlling these corpse soldiers. The emotion surged, and the professor's roar turned into a wail. Student. I'm curious. I'm hurting you. I'll pay you back. Its body trembled, the shadow began to retreat, the black mist dispersed like smoke, the corpse soldiers fell to the ground stiffly, and the fragments of the maze fell to the ground. The professor's living corpse broke into the hall, the door burst, corpse soldiers poured in like a swarm of insects, and the shadow maze began to completely disintegrate, the lenses on the wall shattered, and hallucinations spattered like fragments, each piece reflecting the fear of the team. Youkai saw his father's tombstone cracked, and the living corpse crawled out and whispered, "Your fault." In Guan Ting's sight, his father's phantom laughed. Failed engineer, in front of Inua's eyes, his uncle's face twisted into a traitor, blood debt repaid. The roar was like thunder, the stone platform shook, rivers of blood gushed out from the gaps, and the sticky red liquid climbed onto their shoes like living tentacles. Tingzi. Youkai rushed over, tore off his sleeve and pressed the wound. Hold on. You engineering genius, don't fall here. The city is still waiting for us to save you. Guan Ting gasped and forced a smile. Hey, brother. I'm fine, the pulse was successful. Look, the black fog is receding, but Professor, it's not over yet. The professor's living corpse broke free and rushed to the stone platform. The remaining soul roared, eternal life, immortal. Inua's blood vortex accelerated, and she took Youkai's hand. Together. Use your determination to suppress it. The two of them faced each other with their palms facing each other, locking the soul stone with their blood perspective, and Youkai shouted, Teach, Professor, the betrayal is over. The Li family is free, and you should rest in peace. The stone platform roared, the blood river flowed backwards, the shadow maze completely collapsed, fragments fell like rain, and the illusion faded, but the price was approaching. Guan Ting's injuries were so severe that his eyes turned black, and the professor's body began to crack, and the green light dimmed, but the last whisper, the price, the bloodline is broken, the city, the edge. Although the black fog receded, the screams of the distant city were still echoing. The cracks in the altar expanded, and the blood river flowed like a wound. The three figures swayed in the red light. The crisis turned into aftermath, but it vaguely foreshadowed a greater price. The backflow of the blood river wrapped around the edge of the stone platform like a living snake. The red light illuminated Guan Ting's pale face. His hand was still pressing the exploded remains of the detector. Blood seeped out from between his fingers and mixed into the sticky liquid. Tingzi, don't close your eyes. Listen to me, you bastard engineer, you always like to show off your strength, hold on now. Youkai knelt on the ground, his voice choked with sobs as if his throat was strangled by a wire. He pressed Guan Ting's wound with all his strength, and the cloth was instantly soaked with blood and was as hot as red-hot iron. Guan Ting's eyes were half opened, and a familiar evil smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, but it was as weak as a gossamer. Hey, brother, the worst thing I have cultivated in my life, is myself, but you and Nono, have to live, the city is still waiting for us. Let's, go eat at that stinky tofu stall. His words were intermittent, like the noise of an old radio. The living corpse of the professor in the distance roared like thunder. His green eyes were fixed on the stone platform, and the rotting body rushed towards him. His claws slashed through the air, bringing with it a gust of fishy wind. Uncle, no. Stop. Inua screamed and stood up. The blood vortex on her wrist spun faster. She tightened Yokai's palm, and the two people's blood perspectives merged, just like holding hands when playing house when they were children, but it was a matter of life and death. Youkai, use your strength to press it. The soul stone is in the heart of Shirtai. We have to smash it and break this damn chain of immortality. Her voice trembled, and tears fell down, dripping into the blood river, causing small ripples. The professor's living corpse hit the edge of the stone platform, and the stones shattered and flew. It opened its bloody mouth and roared intermittently, blood, veins, immortal, Lees, repay. The counterattack of the undead erupted like a tide, the surrounding walls shook, and the fragments of the shadow maze gathered together again, climbing up from the ground like black vines, entangling the three of them. The black mist was as thick as the air in Taipei during the foggy season, and the phantom of the dynasty faintly emerged inside. The emperor's iron crown flashed, and the laughter of the rebels echoed, eternal life, the price, the blood sacrifice of the whole family. Youkai gritted his teeth and stood up, kicked away the shadow vines wrapped around his legs, and thought in his mind, he could no longer hesitate. From that curious boy to now, he had to shoulder all this. Like his father taught him, a man must defend his brother from the knife. No, give me the direction. Tingzi, don't sleep, the pulse you gave is still going on, we smashed this damn rock. He rushed towards the stone platform, and the professor's claws grazed his shoulder, tearing a bloody hole. The pain made his eyes black, but Youkai did not retreat. He picked up the fragments of the detector on the ground with his backhand, and smashed it into the knees of the living corpse. Professor, wake up. You are not a monster, you are teaching me to dig. The mentor of the truth. We have paid off the blood debt of the Li family, don't let the curse destroy modern times. The professor's body froze for a moment, his green eyes flashed, and the remaining soul whispered intermittently, students, are curious, harm, but, the truth, is free. It struggled to retreat, and black mist poured out of its body, turning into the remains of corpse soldiers, and the roar shook the hall like an earthquake. Guan Ting suddenly grabbed Yokai's ankle with force, and his strength exploded at this moment, like a dying engineer's last-ditch effort. Youkai, let's go. I'll stop them. He rolled over and rolled to the edge of the stone platform, grabbed the last electromagnetic coil, and the blood drawn from the wound mixed into the line, overloading it forcefully. Eat my last shot. You dynasty ghosts, go back to the history books. The electric current shot out like lightning, exploding a cloud of black mist, and the corpse Bing's shadow was torn apart and screamed, but the backlash hit Guan Ting like a giant hammer. His whole body twitched, blood spurted out from his mouth, and his father's phantom was laughing in his eyes. Failure, engineering waste. Guan Ting's laughter was intermittent. Dad. I fixed it, this time. I didn't let you down. He let go of his hand and hit his head heavily on the ground. His body was limp and his breathing was stagnant, like a broken machine, forever still. Tingzi. No. Youkai roared like a wild beast. He rushed over and hugged Guan Ting's body. Tears mixed with blood fell down, and his heart collapsed like a maze. His best friend who played football together since childhood was gone like this. The guy who always laughed at him for saying that archaeology was like digging potatoes, died for them. The pain was as painful as a knife, but he gritted his teeth and stood up, his eyes as red as rivers of blood. You idiot. I won't let your death be in vain. No, let's go. For the sake of Tingzi, smash this core. The explosion of growth ignited like fire, and he was no longer the inexperienced student, but a leader, with determination like steel. Inua nodded, her eyes blurred with tears. She grabbed the photo album and pressed it against the crack of the stone platform. Yes. Blood exchange, burn it. The two of them joined forces, and Youkai used the fragments to smash open the shell of the stone platform, revealing the pulsing soul stone inside. The blue-black crystals were like heartbeats, like the soul of the undead. The counterattack reaches its peak, the professor's living corpse pounces again, roaring, immortality, must not be cut off. The black mist turned into sharp claws and clawed at them, shadow vines wrapped around Youkai's waist, and the hallucination struck again. His father's tombstone cracked, whispering, "It's your fault for killing your brother. Get away. You ghosts." Youkai shouted, throwing away the vines, and had a short inner monologue. Tingzi's sacrifice cannot be in vain. He and Inua's palms faced each other, and the blood view locked on the soul stone. Inua whispered the ancestral spell, Li's bloodline, break the chain and burn it. The dynasty's betrayal, starting from the bloody night in the palace, the 1,000-year curse, pay off today. The album page automatically ignited, flames shot up like red lotus, the blood river boiled, and the soul stone cracked like a whale. The professor's living corpse froze in mid-air, his green eyes dimmed. Noel, student, price, repay, rest. Its body disintegrated into black mist, and the army of zombies fell like dominoes. The roar faded into a whisper, the fragments of the shadow maze fell to the ground with a clang, the reflection on the wall shattered like a mirror, and the illusion dissipated into smoke. The flames engulfed the photo album, the pages curled up and burned, the boundary between life and death was like a broken kite, the supernatural power retreated rapidly, the black mist shrank into the cracks, the screams of the outside world faded away, and the city lights faintly penetrated, like a breath before dawn. Youkai hugged Guan Ting's body and backed away. The stone platform suddenly collapsed, the blood river dried up and turned to ashes. The air became fresher, and the smell of rust dissipated, replaced by the smell of wet earth in the mountains and forests. Tingzi, you engineering genius always said that I am looking for death in archaeology. Now you take the first step, I will remember you, brother. His voice was low, and he couldn't hold back his tears, but his eyes were firm. He learned to face loss not to escape, but to shoulder the responsibility, just like what the elders taught during the Chinese New Year, if there is something wrong at home, you have to take care of it. Enoch leaned on his shoulder, gasping weakly, and the ashes of the photo album in her hand fell. Youkai, uncle's remnant soul rested in peace, and the blood debt of the Li family was ended. But, the edge of the curse is still there, and the shadow of some parts of the city may remain. We have to protect it and prevent this ghost from waking up again. Just like when you were a child, you always pulled me to go on adventures. Now, let me go with you." Her words carried the weight of future responsibilities, and her eyes were shining with determination, and old emotions were rekindled like fire. Guan Ting shouted, "Pulse ready. 3, 2, 1. He pressed the detector, and electromagnetic waves exploded like lightning, sweeping across the ruins and interfering with the pulse of the blood river. "Eat my move, you damn dynasty." Sparks flew everywhere, the stone platform cracked, the supernatural power began to retreat, the black mist shrank into the gaps, and the fragments of illusion melted like snowflakes. But the backlash came. Guan Ting's shadow twisted into his father's appearance, electricity rushed into his body, he groaned, knelt down and vomited blood, the detector exploded, and the debris pierced his leg. "Ah, damn. Dad, you can't win. I fixed it." He fell, his face was as pale as paper, blood gushed out from the wound and mixed into the blood river. The wind poured in through the cracks, like the wild wind in the mountains carrying the smell of pine needles, blowing away the last trace of black fog. Youkai moved forward step by step, with Guan Ting's body weighing heavily on his shoulders. Every step he took seemed to be carrying half a lifetime of memories. Enoch held his arm, her steps were frivolous, but the red and swollen tears in her eyes had dried up, replaced by a stubborn light. "Youkai, did you hear that whisper? They are retreating, they are really retreating," she whispered, her voice still carrying the nasal sound of someone who had just cried. She reached out and touched the empty stone platform ruins. The surrounding shadow fragments were like ashes blown away by the wind. After they clinked to the ground, they stood still and never got up again. They squeezed through the last cracked stone door, and the mechanism of the ancient tomb made a final muffled sound, like the pendulum of an old clock stopping. Outside is a familiar mountain forest, the setting sun leaks golden light from the treetops, and the chirping of birds sounds sporadically, without the weird echo. Youkai put Guan Ting down gently and leaned against the tree trunk, panting and looking around. The aftermath of the blood river was not chased out, and the entrance to the shadow maze seemed to be sealed by cement. There were only cracks on the stone wall and no reflected phantom. "Tingzi, look, it's still the same outside. The foggy season in Taipei is coming soon, and you hate the humidity the most, saying it will damage your instruments." He murmured to himself, feeling a pain in his heart. This trip, from curiosity to now, he has learned what the price is. Inua knelt down and gently closed Guan Ting's eyes. He always said that engineers repair things, and we archaeologists are the ones who cause trouble. But this time, he repaired both of our lives. My uncle's living corpse was all scattered, the soul stone was shattered into ashes, and the cursed chain was broken. There will no longer be those shadows in the city, I can feel it. They used their mobile phones to dial the distress signal. The signal deep in the forest was as weak as a ghost's scream, but they finally got through. When the rescue team arrived, it was already dark and the searchlights were dazzling. Youkai and Inua were wrapped in blankets and carried on a stretcher, and Guan Ting's body was carefully wrapped. The roar of the helicopter covered the mountain wind and flew towards the sea of lights in the city. Youkai looked out the window. Taipei's 101 building was like a silver needle piercing the night sky. He thought, going from the darkness of the ancient tomb to this light is like waking up from a dream, but the hole is even bigger after waking up. No, what do you mean by guard? We can't let this happen again. He turned around and asked, his voice hoarse. Enoch held his hand tightly, the blood stains on her palm still not washed away. Live first. The photo album is burned, but the blood of the Li family is still there, and I will learn to seal the residual image on the edge. My uncle's teaching is not to live forever, but to face the past. Her words were like the chat in the park when she was a child. At that time, they were just kids pulling chrome hooks, and they never thought that they would involve thousand-year-old ghosts. A few days later, in a city hospital, the smell of disinfectant was pungent. Youkai was sitting on the hospital bed, with more than a dozen stitches on the wound on his shoulder. He looked in the mirror and lost weight. His eyes were sunken, but he had gained a kind of calmness, as if he had transformed from a hot-blooded boy to a man who could handle things. The news is broadcast on TV. There is a breakthrough in the case of the disappearance of the archaeology professor. The entrance to the ancient tomb in the mountain forest is blocked. Officials say it is a natural landslide. There was no mention of the undead or living corpses, and they both kept silent in a tacit agreement. Tingzi left so suddenly, the funeral must be held properly. Youkai said to Inuo. She sat by the bed, holding hot porridge, and persuaded him to eat it. Enoch nodded, her eyes red. His parents came, crying like something. My classmates from the engineering department also came, saying that he was the best at fixing computers. He was always our supporter since childhood. On the day of the funeral, it was drizzling, and the Taipei cemetery was wet. Guan Ting's coffin was simple, with the inscription "Engineering Genius," never broken. Youkai stood in the rain without an umbrella, and the rain rolled down his face, mixed with tears. Brother, you always laugh at me digging potatoes and say there is no future in archaeology. But this time, you dug out my courage. From playing football in elementary school to chatting at a supper stall in college, you, my best friend, still owe me a meal of stinky tofu when I leave. He whispered, and the relatives and friends around him bowed their heads in silence. Guan Ting's father patted him on the shoulder. Boy, he believes in you. He said that you two are close buddies. At that moment, Youkai had a short inner monologue. Sacrifice is not the end, it is the force that pushes me forward. Friendship is like a river of blood, sticky but unbreakable. Inuo pulled him aside after the funeral. The rain stopped and there was a rainbow in the sky. Youkai, I have to go. I live in seclusion in the mountains and learn the sealing skills passed down by my ancestors. The city is too bright and it is easy for light to leak. Although those afterimages are weak, you have to keep an eye on them. Her voice was soft, with the sourness of parting. Youkai was stunned and held her hand. No, you've been hiding a secret since you were a child. Now that it's been revealed, don't run away again. At least, come back for the Chinese New Year for a reunion dinner. She smiled, her eyes curled into crescents, like those on the old campus. Fool, the blood is connected. I will come back to protect this city, just like you protect the truth. They hugged each other, their emotions were like lingering warmth. They didn't say much, but they understood each other. From old acquaintances to partners, this trip to hell burned away fear and left behind trust. Inuo turned and left, her figure blending into the crowd, leaving behind a faint scent of the mountains and forests. A few months later, Youkai returned to school. In the class of the Department of Archaeology, he was no longer the impulsive student. The professor's monument stands in front of the library, with the inscription, "Pursue the truth without fear of darkness." That afternoon, with the sun shining brightly, he stood alone in front of the monument, holding a piece of gravel recovered from the ancient tomb in his hand. Without the pulse of the soul stone, only ordinary rock remained. Teacher, from the day you disappeared, I thought curiosity was a blessing, but I didn't expect it to be a sword. But Tingzi's sacrifice and Nuonyuo's bloodline made me understand, archaeology is not about digging for treasures, but about digging for shadows in the heart. I will write a report to reveal the mechanism of the ancient tomb, proving the legend of the blood sacrifice of the dynasty, but the curse, that is left to those of us who have experienced it, will always be kept secret. He swore in a low voice, the wind blew, and the words on the monument flashed, like the professor's green eyes blinking. Warmth surged in his heart, from the panic of getting lost in the maze to the decision to smash stones. He grew up, no longer escaping from illusions, but faced them head-on, becoming an archaeologist who could lead a team. Life is back on track, the streets of Taipei are still noisy, night market vendors sell stinky tofu, the foggy season is here, the air is moist but not dark. Youkai occasionally dreams of Guan Ting's evil smile, and laughs to himself when he wakes up. Brother, you have fixed the world. Postcards from Inno occasionally arrive, depicting mountains and forests, and writing, the shadows are at peace, everything is fine. The supernatural threat is over, the 1,000-year-old tomb is sealed underground forever, and the roar of the living corpses is only a memory. He opened the door and his mother served hot soup. Son, if you lose weight, eat more. He nodded, sat down, and always remember this lesson: bravery is not fearlessness, but moving forward in fear, shouldering everything for the sake of friendship and the truth. From then on, life was stable, but with a deep sense of satisfaction. The cracks in the hull widened, the outside wind blew in, and the leaves rustled, but there was a faint whisper echoing in the distance, like the unfinished aftermath. Youkai helped Inoa up, hugged Guan Ting tightly, and stepped out of the shadow. The three figures moved forward in the afterglow of red light. The despair on the edge of victory turned into new life, but left a trace of suspense. Has the edge of the city really been restored?